As we prepare to dive into today's story, please take a moment to indicate your location in the comment section, and remember to show support by liking and subscribing. It's been quite a journey, I remarked with a faint smile. Seated beside me in the first-class cabin, a man in the second row held a significant role in my life. My boss, and for the past 7 years, my father-in-law. In private, I affectionately called him Brian. However, in the professional realm, I always referred to him as Mr. Brown. This formality was a mutual understanding between us to uphold clear boundaries at work. I had joined his company, Brown Electricals, and later married his only daughter just a couple of years after becoming a part of the organization. Fresh out of college, I was a budding mechanical engineer with nothing more than potential on my side. At that time, the job market was saturated with seasoned professionals boasting far more impressive resumes than mine. Despite having numerous options, he took a leap of faith and chose to give me an opportunity. I never forgot that gesture and endeavored to demonstrate that I was indeed a worthy investment. Honestly, I continued, I thought Parker Industries would walk away with the lion's share of this deal. Every time I spoke with Tom or Morgan in their purchasing department, they gave me the impression they were leaning heavily towards staying loyal to their established partner. It seemed like their long-standing relationship with that entrenched supplier would be difficult, if not impossible, for us to overcome. You know, Alex, I'm convinced you were the key to making this deal happen. 3 times their design team threw curveballs at us with those what-if changes in the specs, and every single time you responded with 2 or 3 alternative designs that met their needs perfectly. They were clearly impressed by how quickly and effectively you handled those challenges, son. In fact, I think you've more than earned a nice bonus for the way you represented Brown Electrical down in Atlanta. I'll make sure that's taken care of as soon as we get back home. Thank you, sir, I replied, feeling I felt a sense of pride in knowing that my efforts had made a positive impact for the company. I simply did my best, and I'm grateful that it was able to contribute in a meaningful way. Moving forward, my focus is on ensuring that we uphold all of our commitments. I have full confidence in our team's ability to deliver on our promises. Our dedicated team at the office is committed to maintaining our reputation and will settle for nothing less than excellence. Being a mid-sized company gives us the advantage of caring deeply about our work while also having the capacity to handle our workload effectively. Brian chuckled and agreed with my sentiments. As we sat in comfortable silence, the sound of the plane surrounded us. When the pilot announced our approaching arrival, we prepared for landing, securing our seat belts once more. Brian mentioned needing help with the prototype items once we landed, and I assured him that I would assist with loading the boxes into. The man smiled at me mischievously before I left to meet my wife. He assured me not to take up too much of my time as he knew I was eager to return to my sweetheart after 5 days apart. Throughout our 7 years of marriage and the previous year of dating, I had never been away from her for more than 3 days, always longing for her love and intimacy. Although I had traveled occasionally during that time, this trip felt like the longest I had ever been away from her. I was filled with anticipation to see Linda, my wife, and I was confident she would be eagerly waiting for my return. As the plane descended towards the runway, my thoughts shifted from work to my beautiful wife, Linda. We had met in college when she was 19, and after a year of casual dating, we decided to commit to each other. We got married when she turned 21, and even now, years later, she remained as radiant as ever. The elegant woman's exquisite figure had developed in ways that enhanced her charm. Her curves had evolved, emphasizing her classic hourglass shape. Every aspect of her, from her inviting smile to her contagious laughter, continued to captivate me. Just the thought of her ignited a rush of excitement within me. Eager to return home and be in her embrace, I noticed Brian, a faint smile on his face, lost in thoughts of his wife, Brenda. The resemblance between the two women was striking. Brenda, now 48, seemed like a more mature version of Linda. They both shared the same vibrant strawberry blonde hair, toned legs from their tennis matches, and a confident grace in their presence. If Linda were to age into someone as lovely as Brenda, I considered myself truly fortunate. Beauty, they say, only improves with time, and I couldn't help but feel grateful for the years ahead. I was to have found a partner who made every stage of life so fulfilling. As the pilot's voice came on announcing the final descent, I adjusted my seatbelt, my mind already filled with the anticipation of seeing Linda again. We touched down and taxied to the jetway. Being in the front of the plane, we deplaned quickly. But once we reached the baggage carousels, we had to wait 40 minutes for the luggage to start coming out. By the time we retrieved our bags and the 2 large boxes of prototype parts, Brian and I were both eager to get home. Fortunately, the Saturday afternoon drive was smooth since Brian and Brenda lived just 2 miles from our house. Dropping him off wasn't much of an inconvenience. As we pulled into his circular driveway, we were met with an unexpected sight. 3 cars parked out front, including Linda's BMW and 2 vehicles I didn't recognize. Any idea of who those belonged to? I asked, nodding toward the unfamiliar cars. No, Brian replied, his tone heavy, glanced over and noticed his expression shift. I've got a bad feeling, he murmured. Stay quiet and come with me. We stepped out of the car, leaving the doors ajar to avoid any noise. Brian attempted the front door, but it was locked. Even after using his key to disengage the handle lock, the deadbolt remained steadfast. With a disappointed shake of his head, he quietly relocked the door. The living room and den were empty, save for scattered clothes. Faint sounds coming from the hallway caught our attention, leading us quietly to the entrance of the master bedroom. The door was wide open, revealing a scene that defied belief. On the bed were 2 naked women and 2 naked men, engrossed in an intimate act. In an instant, I recognized the women: Brenda, my mother-in-law, and Linda, my wife. The sounds of their encouragement to their partners left no room for doubt. This was a consensual betrayal. Brenda and Linda had chosen to deceive us willingly. A touch on my arm made me turn to see Brian, who gestured for silence and motioned for us to proceed cautiously. He walked back towards the hallway, and I followed him into the den where he opened a closet door. Son, from what I know about you, I don't think you're going to stand for what we just witnessed. Am I right? I replied, no, sir, I won't. That completely shattered our marriage. He nodded. I've had my suspicions about Brenda, but now we have proof. He then outlined the plan, pulling out 2 aluminum softball bats from the closet and handing one to me, along with a digital camera from the shelf. We're going back in there. You take one side, I'll take the other. Let me take a few pictures first, and then we'll strike. Aim for a spot right between their legs. I understood our target. As we approached the open bedroom door, we overheard Brenda's voice saying, "Oh God, baby, I just love it." Linda's muffled response was cut off as Brian's camera clicked. Linda's head was buried in the mattress, but the noise caused her to freeze in place. Suddenly, she began frantically trying to stand up. Brian quickly placed the camera down, and we simultaneously swung our bats. The sounds of pleasure were immediately drowned out by the screams of pain from the 2 men. They fell off the bed, writhing in agony on the floor while clutching their groins. Brenda and Linda rushed to cover themselves at the head of the bed, trembling in fear. Brenda pleaded, "Oh, please don't hurt me." I could vaguely hear Linda speaking, but my mind was clouded with anger as I glared at the man who had been with my mother-in-law. I'd raised my bat again, poised to strike. "Alex," Brian's stern voice broke through my fury, causing me to halt my swing. I turned to look at Brian, who nodded at me, signaling to lower the bat. Despite my racing heart and tight grip on the handle, I managed to relax my fingers and place the bat down, lowering the bat to my side. I watched as Brian calmly bent down and picked up 2 pairs of pants from the floor with a dangerous intensity. He searched through the pockets and retrieved 2 sets of car keys. Without a word, Brian headed to the window facing the street. Opening it, he pushed the storm screen back and swiftly threw the keys out the window with a practice motion. Without verifying where they landed, it was evident from the lack of a metallic sound that they had landed in the grass outside the house. Brian then turned back towards the 2 men struggling on the floor with a solemn and focused expression. He seized the man nearest to him, a lean young man who had been involved with Brenda, by his left arm and shoulder. The man let out a shrill cry, holding his groin with his free hand, but Brian showed no mercy. You want to mess around with someone else's wife in my house? This is what you get, Brian growled as he dragged the man towards the window. The man put up a feeble struggle, but Brian's grip remained firm. As they approached the window, Brian pulled him forcefully one last time and launched him out without hesitation. The man's screams filled the air as he plummeted headfirst into the rose bushes below, the sound of branches breaking signaling a harsh landing. Without hesitation, I turned to the other man who had been with Linda and seized him by the back of his neck and belt. Despite his size, the rush of adrenaline made him feel weightless as he attempted to break free from my grasp in a panic. I was determined not to let him escape. You think you can intrude into my life, my marriage, and walk away unscathed? I growled. Not today. Dragging him toward the window, his frantic pleas fell on deaf ears as his bare feet scraped against the carpet with each stumble. With all my strength, I shoved him through the window, his screams echoing louder than. He landed in the same rose bushes as the first guys, thrashing and cursing as the thorns tore into his skin, appearing even more panicked. With a loud thunk, Brian shut the window and locked it. Turning to the two terrified women still huddled at the head of the bed, he saw Brenda trembling, tears streaming down her face, while Linda stared at him with a mix of fear, shock, and another emotion he couldn't quite discern. Despite his heaving chest and boiling blood, the room fell eerily silent save for the muffled groans of the men outside. Brian's cold voice broke the silence as he declared, "We're going to have a little talk." Chaos erupted in the room as both women tried to speak at once. Brenda sobbed, "It's not what it looked like, Brian. I love you. You're the only man I've ever truly loved. Please, you have to believe me." Linda's voice trembled as she echoed her mother's, "Please, Alex. This isn't what you think." "I love you so much." Brian raised his hand, his expression dark and unrelenting as he roared, "Shut up." His voice was laced with fury and disgust, causing both women to freeze with their mouths still open as if they'd been slapped. "You don't get to explain a thing. You just admitted you've done this many times before. Don't think I didn't catch that slip." Brian pointed his bat at Brenda, who shrank back against the headboard. "You're not backing out now. What I saw was exactly what it looked like. You were with a man who wasn't your husband. That's not love, that's betrayal." "Brenda, please," she started, but he cut her off with a venomous snarl. "Don't. Just don't. You've been lying and sneaking around behind my back. And now you want to tell me this was some one-off mistake. Do you think I'm that stupid?" Brian's tone turned cold and merciless. "No, babe. Here's the deal. As of right now, you are free to do as you please." "Go ahead, be my guest," Brenda gasped, her face paling as she expressed, "You sure won't be serving as my wife after this." Tears cascaded down her cheeks, yet Brian remained stoic. Retrieving his phone from his pocket, he tapped the screen and displayed the time for her to see. "You have 10 minutes, 10 minutes to gather anything you want from this house. After that, anything left behind will be discarded, just like you," he declared, narrowing his eyes menacingly. "The clock is ticking, so get moving." As Brenda's lips quivered, she clutched the sheet around her and made her way to the closet, visibly shaken. Turning to Linda, who sat frozen against the headboard, Brian stated, "The same rules apply to you, Linda. You have 10 minutes to pack your things and leave our house." Linda, now known as Alex, cried out in protest, "No, please," rushing off the bed and seizing my arm. I pleaded, "Please reconsider. I care for you deeply. I made a mistake, but I am willing to make it right." Pulling my arm away, I locked eyes with her, the anger chilling my gaze, causing her to step back. In a harsh tone, I retorted, "Make it right? You can't fix this, Linda. You made the choice to shatter our marriage to betray me. Now you must face the repercussions." Pointing to the door, I commanded, "Leave now. Don't make me repeat myself." Her face crumpled as tears streamed down her cheeks, but I remained unmoved. I turned to Brian, who was standing with his arms folded, a baseball bat at his side. Through clenched teeth, I muttered, "We'll talk later." He gave a somber nod, wishing me a safe journey. Glancing at his watch, he called out to Brenda, who was frantically packing her things, 9 minutes, he informed her. Without looking back, I strode down the hallway, indifferent to Linda's tear-stained face, and excuses I left the hall and stepped outside, heading towards my car. As I sat in the driver's seat and closed the door, I felt my hands trembling on the steering wheel. Taking a deep breath, I tried to calm the turmoil inside me. Starting the car, I drove away, leaving Linda behind. The journey home was short, just a couple of miles, but I had to stop twice to vomit before reaching there. Exhausted, I entered my house, carrying the heavy weight of the recent events. Collapsing into my recliner in the den, I was overwhelmed by a sense of betrayal. A few minutes later, the door creaked open, and Linda walked in hesitantly, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "Alex, can we please resolve this? Is there a way to mend things?" Staring at her in disbelief, I was speechless as I tried to comprehend her words. "No, there's no way. I never intended to marry someone like you, Linda, and that's precisely what you are. Whether it's paid for or not, you're essentially a prostitute." Her face crumbled, tears streaming down as she broke down as Linda began to cry uncontrollably. I sat there, shaking my head in disbelief. How could she betray me like this? Despite her tears, she pleaded, "But Alex, you're the only one I love. You can't just throw everything away like this." Unable to contain my anger, I retorted, "No, Linda, you're the one who threw it all away, not me." My voice quivered with rage as I spoke. 8 minutes passed with Linda's sobs echoing down the hallway as she slowly made her way to the bedroom. Each step seemed like a defiant refusal to leave. Though nausea threatened to overwhelm me, I clenched my fists, determined not to let it consume me. After what seemed like an eternity, I forced myself to stand and trudge towards the bedroom. There I saw Linda packing a few clothes into 2 open suitcases, moving slowly as if she had all the time in the world. The suitcases were far from full, and it was evident she was stalling, hoping for something I would give in, hoping to find it in me to forgive her. Without saying a word, I made my way to the suitcases and began zipping them up. "What are you doing?" She screamed from behind me, her voice filled with panic as she rushed towards me. "I told you 10 minutes, I stated coldly and firmly. "I gave you 15. Now it's time for you to leave." Without waiting for her response, I headed towards the front door with both suitcases in hand, feeling the weight of the situation bearing down on me. As I reached the door, I threw the suitcases out onto the front lawn. "No," I snapped as I rushed to grab her arm, not letting her pull away. "Let go of me," she cried out, her voice frantic. "You're not going to change my mind," I growled, asserting my boundaries as I pushed her through the door and onto the lawn. I'd refused to show any weakness this time. She stumbled out, her hands clinging to the doorframe as I grabbed her purse from the table. Removing the keys, I threw the purse aside and I leaned against the door, my chest heaving as I tried to calm the storm inside me. Walking into my home office, I sat down at the desk and fired up the PC. Logging into our bank accounts, I immediately started transferring funds from the joint accounts into my personal one. I knew I'd have to give her something, but there was no way I was letting her drain our savings. Next, I headed to our bedroom, taking in the surroundings. Every corner of the room seemed to echo her presence, her influence on our life together. I opened the window and began tossing out clothes, dresses, shoes, lingerie, and personal items from the dresser. Even the bathroom was not spared as I threw out anything that reminded me of her into the yard. Grabbing a picture of us from the nightstand, I set it on fire and watched it land next to her in the grass. "Take your stuff and get out," I said, my voice low but resolute. "I'm done." Linda's scream echoed as I slammed the door shut with a force that rattled the windows to smash the glass, ripped my image out, and threw the remainder out the window. Despite Linda's desperate calls for me to listen and talk to her, I blocked out everything around me. It became clear that she had destroyed our relationship long before I had even noticed. Brian and I spent Sunday afternoon commiserating and discussing our upcoming plans. We decided to hire his attorney and utilize the same photos as evidence of infidelity. Despite the reluctance of other men to hurt their cheating spouses, Brian and I agreed that adultery would be the basis for our divorces. Our only child was also involved in the predicament. As we made our arrangements, we discovered that each of us brought unique perspectives to the table, and we provided mutual support as we navigated our shared heartbreak. I acknowledged that Brian's loss of both his wife and daughter was even more devastating than mine, though only slightly. By the conclusion of Monday, the attorney had assured us that he would file the papers by the end of Tuesday, after being briefed. He also provided advice regarding our financial responsibilities to our wives, which impacted Brian more than me as he owned his business outright. We learned that our liability could be reduced if the court accepted adultery as the grounds for divorce. Since Sunday, both Brian and I had been constantly contacted by Linda and Brenda, attempting to reach us through our home phones, work lines, and cell phones. We recognized their cell numbers and chose to ignore those calls, but numerous calls from unfamiliar numbers would prompt us to answer, only to quickly hang up upon hearing our wives' voices. Eventually, our attorney convinced us to meet with the women to discuss the terms of the divorce with the hope of reaching an agreement and avoiding a court hearing. We agreed to come together for the meeting since we were all family and wanted to address the events that had led to the situation. The end of our marriages was a shared responsibility between the two women. As soon as I took a seat across from Linda in the conference room, she started to plead with me, saying, "Alex, I never meant to hurt you. I'm so sorry you found out. Please forgive me." I looked at her in disbelief at her audacity. "You never meant to hurt me? You're sorry I found out. You thought it was acceptable to continue lying, betraying our marriage while deceiving me at every turn." I accused. "You never had any intentions of staying faithful, not even from the beginning. Forgiveness." "That is out of the question," I declared, leaning back in my chair. Brenda then addressed Brian, saying, "Brian, I know you're angry with me, but please don't abandon your daughter." Brian, also shocked by the revelations, responded, "My daughter? You raised her to follow in your deceitful footsteps, and now I have doubts she is truly mine." The women recoiled in horror at the realization. Brenda could only whisper, "Surely you can't." Brian responded calmly, "You taught my daughter to follow in your footsteps. I question if she is truly mine. I no longer trust anything you say, Brenda. A DNA test is the only way I'll believe she's my child. Even if it confirms paternity, it doesn't erase the damage you've caused. You've shaped her into a deceitful person. I can't overlook that." Both women appeared crestfallen, tears streaming down their faces, unable to dispute our words. After our attorneys finalized the arrangements, Brian and I left the room swiftly. Although we were obligated to share our financial assets with our ex-wives, the process was less burdensome than expected. It was challenging to split my resources with someone who had betrayed me so profoundly. We had enjoyed some good moments together, although there weren't as many as I had thought. I wanted to acknowledge her for those times, but I struggled with the idea of giving something to a woman who had not been faithful to our vows. Nevertheless, I decided to let it go. Upon returning to work, Brian kept his promise. As things settled down, he surprised me with a generous 5-figure bonus and a modest increase in my monthly salary. I was satisfied with the outcome, feeling a sense of fairness after all that had happened. While we didn't openly discuss our divorces, office gossip spread quickly. Eventually, most of the details emerged, especially when we updated our insurance beneficiaries, which piqued Brian's interest. People connected the dots and created their own versions of the story based on the information they had gathered. Our wives were suspected of infidelity, though the exact details weren't entirely accurate. The truth was evident to everyone. Following the divorce, Brian made a silent vow to concentrate on himself and opted not to pursue dating. He devoted his time and effort to his work and the dogs, his loyal companions. Eventually, he adopted a female German Shepherd from a nearby shelter, and she later welcomed a litter of 5 adorable puppies. Despite the lingering heartache from his past, Brian found comfort in raising the pups, giving them the same love and attention he once reserved for his family. On the other hand, Alex took a different path. He gradually re-entered the dating scene, unwilling to abandon the idea of finding love. One evening, he met Sarah at a local cafe, and they immediately hit it off. Sarah's intelligence, confidence, and warmth captivated Alex, leading to a rapid deepening of their bond. Before long, they officially became a couple. Alex discovered happiness in the companionship that Sarah provided, relishing dinners, weekend hikes, and quiet evenings spent together. This was something he hadn't realized was missing in his life. Adding to this newfound joy, Alex welcomed 2 German Shepherd puppies into his life, gifted to him by Brian. Brian, who already had 3 of his own, had kept 2 from the same litter to share their playful energy with his friend. These furry companions brought a different kind of comfort and companionship to Alex, reminiscent of the bond Brian had with his dogs. As Alex navigated this new chapter in his life, he learned to balance his time between his girlfriend, his pups, and the valuable lessons he had learned from the past. Both Alex and Brian had moved forward in their own ways, finding solace in their individual pursuits. We invite our dear listeners to share their thoughts in the comments below, and remember to like, share, and subscribe for more content.